I suppose it deals with that area of human behaviour that exists beyond the reason, beyond the normal, beyond civility perhaps. But I guess it also looks at and critiques, well, what is reason? What is normality? What is common sense? It holds up a light to that position, and it appears to me that it's an area that is precarious or fragile, and in some cases perhaps is an illusion, because what goes beyond reason, it seems that is normality in some ways. I'm Tim Shaw, and welcome to my exhibition, which is entitled Beyond Reason at the San Diego Museum of Art. The exhibition is probably the largest exhibition to date, and spans nearly 30 years of professional practice, dating back to 1987, so it's more than 30 years. It's an interesting coincidence that I first stepped foot in San Diego in 1978. When I was a kid, my mother had met a gentleman from San Diego, and we were invited as a result of that to come and visit. So many years later, it seems quite a coincidence that this is where my first exhibition in the US is. It's important because it deals with many themes that I think are relevant to today, and particularly in the US at the moment, specifically dealing with the politics of now, and where does democracy stand within the country and worldwide. I guess it questions the true nature of what democracy is, and does it exist? And if it exists, does everybody have total freedom of speech? And is that freedom of speech sometimes curtailed? That's just perhaps one of the themes. There are many others that deal with power and the lack of power, loss and gain of land. When I started off creating, and pretty much straight away I knew what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. I worked with clay, and I worked with clay for a good many years. And then I began to expand out into casting and using different materials. And I felt that, as a sculptor, you've got to go on a journey, explore different areas, different materials. I began beating with copper and steel. I worked with plastic. The work began to become a lot more immersive, working with sound and smell and light, the effects of light upon form. The middle world is the first work that you encounter in the exhibition. It's the first piece that I created in my career, and it's very much looking at, I suppose, existence between the black and white, and it's dealing very much with the grey area and that idea of the past and the present meeting. Well, I grew up in Northern Ireland during the Troubles, which began around 1969, and they went on for over 30 years. The Troubles affected everybody, all parts of society.
it is obvious that the Unionist Party is quite prepared to set Catholic against Protestant in this country, rather than give the reforms which would in fact mean that there would be an end to sectarianism.
Catholics march in one direction, Protestants, accompanied by the blare of martial music, march in the other. When the courses of these two factions collided, the result was civil disorder. This week...
And when I came to England, I really didn't want to work about the Troubles, or even talk about, because you came to England, everybody wanted to know about the Troubles. And for a greater part, my work for many years was very influenced by classical arts and by the arts of the 19th century and by mythology, which of course delve into politics and all the stuff of what humans are about. Coming from Northern Ireland to living in Cornwall, I kind of broke open this sense about the middle world, the middle ground, that area between the black and white. What I grew up in was particularly at that time, was a sense that where things were very defined, that you lived in a Protestant area, or you lived in a Catholic area, and the two didn't mix, and everything, territory was marked out. And so the political, the spiritual, and the religious dimensions were very much seen in terms of black and white. My dad had been a Mason, and I do remember as a kid visiting a Masonic temple and seeing images of the stars, the sun and the moon, and the Bible on the table, between the candles on the table. And I don't think I ever asked any questions about it. And even though I attended a Masonic boys' school in Dublin, these images were never spoken about, ever. And it's interesting because I didn't even think at the time when I was using these symbols that they were attached to that early life experience, that the mystery, the great mystery of beyond the normal and the everyday. So that's what the middle world is about. It's about the meeting place between light and dark, joy and despair, past time and the future. But it really wasn't until around 2003, with the emergence of the Iraq War, and it began to really reawaken something within me about what I'd experienced growing up in Northern Ireland. And I created this piece called Casting a Dark Democracy, and I think from then on, really, I began to work much more politically, and the work was much more centered around conflict. One of the works, Soul's Natural Possession, it's a response to looking at those in a position of power, and it looks at how power can be manipulated, and this idea of truth, that it can be manipulated to suit the needs of those in power. So it's about, with that, fabricating truth and I guess manipulation, really. Claude Lanzmann came out with this line that it's about a dimension of barbarity that does not disappear. And so it's very much about how power functions. And it's something that just functions throughout existence. It's there in governance. It's there in every facade of our existence, including the art world. And I think the other thing, I guess, about it is that it's very much about threat, that if you don't fall into place, that if words don't work, then violence will. and it's about things that how histories can be rewritten, and the story can be rewritten to be a fact that people can be written out of the story, how what we know as truth can be edited. So one of the pieces looks at the digital age. It's called Breakdown Clown, and it's very much shaped by, asking the question where we're at and where we're going with that. It's quite interesting. There's a book called The Machine Stops by A.M. Foster. And as society develops, they lose the will to step outside their environment. And they've lost any sort of idea of what is above in the earth, that it's all down below, it's all in the machine. The machine becomes God, and the manual becomes the Bible. I'm not saying that that's going to happen in this age, but I think that, I guess one of the things through the clown is, it's just asking, where are we going? Are we aware of where we're being taken on this journey? And I view the digital age as an incredible age with many positive benefits, but at the same time, it asks, do not sleepwalk into a disaster. Defending integrity from the powers that be, again, it's very much about, it's a look at the individual voice and how much freedom that people have or not within society. I've been in a situation where I've looked at this and researched that area to see how things can be manipulated, and when it goes to the press, that all is not true, what you hear in the press, or not everything comes through as true. Then we've got a piece called Alternative Authority that's very much about how community can gang up and, I guess, go against the individuals that the community are not happy about their behaviour. Yeah. What the work does, it looks at this form of community punishment. This was a punishment that was carried out by the community that felt a right to do that to their own family, so to speak. And I think one of the reasons why I chose to make this piece of work is because growing up in Northern Ireland, everybody knew about the bombings, the shootings, the kneecappings that took place. But this other form of punishment, so to speak, is something that certainly in my mind and many others, it occupies some other part of the psyche or the imagination. It seems like a punishment, though it may not kill a person or even maim them physically forever. It may not do that, but it certainly, there's something about it that is incredibly brutal and incredibly dark and ancient, and that's something that that I find the reason why I had to work about this. Mother, the air is blue, the air is dangerous. I really first started thinking about that around 2012. And the piece is based on an early life experience of being in a restaurant where a bomb goes off below. And I've always considered this to be a day called Bloody Friday, in which 26 bombs were planted, and at least 19 of which went off within 70 or 80 minutes. And I think the first 17 of those went off within the first 30 minutes. So it's a day that has a particular significance because of the magnitude of that terrorist attack. I was at the age of 7, and so my sister will remember us running through the streets, not knowing whether we were running away or running towards the next explosion. The reason for making it was to give form to this experience. The one thing that I do take away from this is that what happened then happens now across the world. And when we think of Syria, of far greater magnitude and tragedy, I'm always surprised. And I think in the beginning, when I was starting off in my career, my idea of what interpretation was or should be was pretty limited, in that, and a sort of a false sense of control, in that you made a piece of work and you had a specific idea of what you were expressing, and you wanted that idea to be received by others. But the reality is that is going to happen as a basis, but different people come to that same piece with their own experiences, and they get from it another aspect, so to speak, that maybe something that's some other thing that you have never experienced in your life. So when you're speaking with audiences, it's interesting, now many years on, that I'm very interested to hear what other people have to say and how they interpret the work. And that's kind of important. It in a sense, it informs your work, that the artist isn't just living in an ivory tower, that it's about dialogue. And certainly there is an important message there. The power of the individual should never be underestimated, and that everybody has a voice, and everybody has not only a voice, but actually has a responsibility to use it. And that, I've met people that don't vote, and I think that's very irresponsible, because people have fought and died to have the right to vote. And I think that people must find that power within their own personal voice to say what they think, because we are all society. Society is not just about the upper echelons of those that have control over it, so to speak, or governance. We're all part of society, and we all have a responsibility to shape the society and shape the country in which we live, and that must not be forgotten.